you can recognize it.
Bipolar attention deficit and borderline narcissistic trauma. That's my condition, and I must live by my truth. So we enter into the world of overdiagnosed, self-diagnosed and misdiagnosed pop mental disorders. First of all, my deep sympathies for those of you who have deep-seated chronic cognitive imbalances or genetic bias toward that. I hope you manage. Then for those of you who pick up and plug in these pop conditions as a part of your self-identity for leverage, for escape, less sympathy for you. Snap out of it. You are simply enabling your own dysfunction in life. It is no different from asserting, I am dumb, and therefore I will not ever understand that. And I will not even go through the steps, make the effort toward understanding. I resign because I have affirmed my inability, a fatalistic resignation from possibility. So let's look at a couple of these pop conditions, increasingly prevalent in reality or otherwise in our modern age, with a reminder that I do not mean to belittle the actual and complicated conditions that some of you have, but I do mean to address those of you who misuse these diagnoses for questionable purposes, by that creating inconvenience, obstacles, and even harm both to yourself and to others. Now, while I mentioned self-diagnosis and internet peer diagnosis or even AI diagnosis these days as being unreliable confirmations of a particular condition, it should be noted that even the medical establishment, the psychiatric industry, etc., are often sloppy, even if their reference manuals were definitive, and prone to confirmation bias on the side of affirmation. Might be not. So yes, you have this condition and here's your medical bill and you will not ever get over it. So keep paying your bills for the rest of your life, for consultations, for all the meds you keep on ingesting to chronically destabilize your brain chemistry and your baselines. So take all of that with a grain of salt. Look into paths forward. As first in line, let's look at ADHD, attention deficit, hyperactive, and to a point of disorder. So the fact is, in our extremely stimulating modern environment and our preoccupation with every sort of gadget and rapid-paced distraction, we are prone to lower, weaker attention. Now, that is not a medical condition. It's simply a condition resulting from the way you condition your mind through the inputs and how you relate to them. If you find distraction and delight in a constant feed and stream of diversions from whatever it is that you should actually deal with in life, then over time, yes, it will definitely sink in, but not because it's inherent to you, because you yourself have brought it into being and keep feeding it, keep supporting it, sustaining it, and enabling it with your lifestyle and the decisions you make. At some point you no longer make those decisions, you are simply going with the flow, the endless stream of distractions. But instead of saying, oh, I have ADHD, therefore I cannot pay attention to anything that requires more than 10 seconds of sustained attention, so why should I even try? Well, by that, your attention span will increasingly degrade. Instead, make the effort, take the time, prune your distractions, learn mental discipline. It's not like you're the first person in the history of mankind who was often distracted by diverse pulls from diverse directions, but there are ways forward, there are ways of training your mind instead of surrendering to the endless stream of inattention. Second in line into bipolarity, manic depressive episodes, the oscillation of extremes. Yes, some of us are more prone to go along the cascade when it begins, and we go from a baseline following a particular trigger from one thing to another, like a chain reaction, into the very extreme of hyper and the very extreme of depression, collapse. These are, in their most basic, abstract form, essentially born from excessive focus, concentration, hyper attention in a particular bandwidth, and at the other end, excessive dilution of attention, the broadening of your field of awareness to a point where nothing stands out, nothing gives you a driving push forward. You have mania and you have depression. But you can learn to recognize these traits and these drives and learn to halt them. You don't have to, because you are bipolar, you don't have to swing back and forth all the time. You can recognize, here are the triggers that typically lead to a manic episode, these are the triggers that typically lead to a depressive episode. Then watch the cascade begin and try to halt it, try to eliminate the conditions that lead to the excess of that condition. Yes, you need to be able to shift between focus and broad spectrum, but if you go into extremes, you will be disabled or you will be in a tunnel. Learn to find the point of balance. Learn to halt your reaction chains. It'll help you. Then into autism, that for some, the minority, is an actual underlying neurological condition, but for many, if not most of you, you're simply a bit more introvert, less sensitive to social cues and so on. Not, okay, let's call it somewhere on the spectrum, right? But do not take that as an excuse to not even try to pay attention to others, to empathize with them, to read their clues, their emotions, their intentions. You are not fundamentally and categorically blind to all of that. You have the ability to learn from your life and interactions. Seize that opportunity, evolve, learn to read more of those cues and reciprocate. Interact with others your level best and understand that reciprocal exchange is the heart of human relations. You cannot simply bail out of it by deferring to your autism. If you do that, you will forever be alone unto yourself, unable to connect, relate with any of this. Then, as the fourth in line, we get into borderline personality and narcissism. Of these, typically, the first borderline is self-diagnosed and the other is peer-diagnosed, where just about anyone who did not do what you hoped would happen but prioritized themselves or something else before you is basically a narcissist. Now let's hold that mirror of self-awareness handy and have that reality checklist primed as to what you are with that sort of a stance and hasty labeling of others. So both of these, though at the extreme ends of the same spectrum, are basically conditions of excessive self-absorption. In borderline personality, you are struggling with the fragility of your identity. You seek affirmation, comfort, etc. You cling to others for keeping yourself together. At the other end, the narcissist has an exaggerated self-image that exploits, abuses, neglects others to its own advantage. Both the same self and your self-absorption, your self-infatuation at the helm generating these disorders. You have the positive and the negative. You have the woe is me and you have the wow is me. The plus and minus of being too absorbed in yourself. So let us try to snap out of the shell, gradually expand our horizon into a sense of identity and belonging that is more integrated with the collective, with the environment, so we can hatch from this unhealthy cocoon of our little fractured and problematic selves. And as the fifth and final, more categorical note, it's born of trauma. I am traumatized, and therefore I behave in this or that manner that I cannot in any way control, so you should just accept it. Now tell me, my little sugar cube, who among us has lived a life entirely without traumatic experience? People do get over their traumas, they actually reflect on the traumas, they process and integrate the lessons from their traumatic experiences into the fullness of their identity, rather than use these traumas as escapes, instead of asserting that these traumas are insurmountable imprints that compel us to forever behave in a manner that is not very balanced and that is conceivably very painful for others. Do not make your traumas an excuse. Learn to live with them, deal with them, process and integrate, and you will grow. Then in summary of all of this, whether or not you have an actual condition or simply a vibe of a condition self-diagnosed, do not yield to it, surrender to it, as if it were forever static, so your truth and your life and your permanent framing. Instead, seek ways to evolve. We have a thing called neuroplasticity. Your cognition and your brain can evolve. They will not, however, evolve by affirming a static condition. They will evolve by flexing your limits, by repetition, training, reconditioning. You can resurrect yourself from all sorts of conditions that have been brought upon by your environment, by your misaligned history of cognition. You simply need to take the steps with determination to a future forward that unfolds more of your life's potentials. If on the other hand you decide that this is what I am and forever will be so, then simply please be aware that it is an act of self-sabotage. You cripple your own evolution and you forfeit your life's potentials. You will not grow unless you make the decision to grow. If you make the decision to freeze yourself in time into your current condition or whatever that you think the condition is, there is simply degradation. It will not ever get better. If you do not swim in a stream, you will be flowing downstream. That's the way it goes. So please, make effort. Try to snap out of it whatever that is not hardwired from the beginning, that has been brought on, whether over short or long-term conditioning. Do the short or long course of works, efforts, skillfully in order to grow out of it, to transform yourself into the fullness of what you can be. Do not resign into a fraction and a shadow of your potential.